absolutely, completely, painfully, beautifully normal. And if you are somewhere where you have access to a piece of paper, a pen, your own fingers, whatever you can do, I want to do a little bit of an exercise with you. I want to do just a little bit of an exercise. I almost said a test. It's not a test. Everyone's going to pass. Everyone gets an A. It's going to be the best test you take all day. So I'm going to say out loud some different experiences or symptoms that you might have experienced in the past year. And I want you to just keep track of the ones that feel true to you. Okay, so in the past year, have you experienced a tightness in your chest? Have you had a racing heart? Have you had trouble focusing? Have you had trouble falling asleep? Have you had trouble eating? Have you had sometimes trouble not sleeping? Have you just wanted to sleep constantly? Have you had maybe an excessive amount of alcohol? Have you had tummy problems? That tightness in the back of your head and your shoulders and your neck? A clenched jaw? A headache? Okay, so this is a partial list taken from another partial list. And at this point, I would want to see how many did you get? How many?
Katie got 9.
Katie got 9. Good job. 11. Justin. Okay, wow. Yeah, Justin got 11 out of 10. All right, that's how many headaches he had. So those are all symptoms of grief. Those are all symptoms of grief. And Joe mentioned that this past year has been so hard for all of us. And even if you've not lost a loved one to death, everybody lost something this year. Everybody lost something, and many of us lost many, many things, and many of us experienced the feeling of watching someone you love or care about lose something. And so whatever score you got, when you turn to your imaginary neighbor and you say, well, Katie got 9, but what about Sarah? What'd you get?
8.
Okay, well, that's not the full story, right? It's not the full story of just what we've experienced. It's everything that we brought to this past year. People have said, we're all in this together, and we are, and we're all in it in different ways. And you know that from all of the people you work with, that all of us bring our own unique experiences to the table. All of us have our own, my friend Dr. Anna and I call it our own grief recipe. So you start with what you've lost over this past year. You add in the effects that it has had on you, and then you go back a little further and you think about, how were you raised? What was the way that you were socialized? What are your cultural beliefs around loss and around community? What are your values? What are the coping skills that you do or do not have? All that is mixed together to make an experience that is absolutely, completely yours. And so when I say that we move forward with, we have to start first with where we are, and even further back, where we've been. There's this idea popularized and possibly coined, I should really know this. There's one invisible hair stuck to my mascara. Women will know that specific kind of pain. Okay. The women in the audience are like, please stop everything. She has got an invisible hair stuck to her mascara. We just simply cannot go on. I think I got it. I'm in the midst of growing out some pandemic bangs. And I wish we were in person so I could see how many other people were growing out pandemic bangs. So how many other people stood in front of their mirror and were like, I can do this. While their partner was like, you should not do that. You're going to regret it. And you're like, don't tell me what I regret this. I regretted it immediately. I looked like Lord Farquaad from Shrek. Okay. I did. My husband brought it up and I was like, we already know. We know. I have a mirror. I looked in it while I did this transformation myself. Thank you, sir. So we have to start with Shrek, always. We have to start with where we are and where we've been. There's this idea called the hero's journey, or the monomyth. Joseph Campbell, Heart of Darkness. It's this idea that out of all of our stories, and there are so many, countless stories, there's also one story. That whether you're talking about me losing my husband and my dad and that pregnancy, or you're talking about Frozen or The Lion King, and I wish I knew a movie that wasn't Disney. Like, anyone know another movie? No, me neither. Those are the only movies. That there is really one story, and it looks like this, or it goes like this. So you start out and you're in the normal world, and that's where I was for most of my life. That's where a lot of us were a year ago or 2 years ago, or before something big came and pushed us against our will into the unknown. Into the unknown. Just kidding. But that song, really, perfection, okay? Perfection. Also the only song I can dance to on Just Dance, on the, is it Just Dance or Let's Dance? I always get it wrong, and the kids are embarrassed, and they're also embarrassed when I dance. However, I'm the mom. I'm in charge. I bought the Nintendo Switch. We're playing Just Dance, and we're going to do the Frozen dance for 50 to 60 minutes, okay? And that's called cardio. So you start off in the normal world. You're pushed into the unknown, and yes, eventually you emerge, right? You're back on top, and you're Elsa, and you know how to spoilers for Frozen ahead. Pause it and fast forward if you don't want to know. You learn how to control your ice fingers. You're not going to accidentally zap your sister, okay? You return and you're Simba, and you're ready to actually be the Lion King. But first, you spend so much time down here. So much time. And down there, it stinks. It's the worst. And it has always stunk. It has always been terrible to suffer. And I don't say, oh, look at it, this is a common experience. I don't say that to minimize your experience at all. I say it, I hope, to contextualize your experience, and I hope that that encourages you. I really do. Because, yeah, we're all in this together, and this is the first rule of improv. I don't know if anybody has ever done improv. I did one class. I was so bad at it. I was not asked to return to level 2. Everyone else graduated. They were like, you've got other strengths, like hand-eye coordination and being tall. Those are all good things too, okay? The first thing that you learn in improv is that it is not yeah, but, which kills the scene. It is yes, and yes, we are all in this together. Yes, we've all experienced 2020 and now 2021, which I refuse to acknowledge as a new year. I just consider it 2022 extended version, extended cut. You can call me in 2022. We'll talk about it then. But it's not just that we're all in it. Yes, and we've all experienced it differently. And we all brought to 2020 and 2021. There's too many 20s in there. Okay, the year 20 and the year 21. We all brought our own recipes to that experience, and then we added to them in the past 14 months. So yes, you are doing your best, and it is still hard. Yes, this is hard, and you are still doing a good job. It can be very, very difficult to hold two truths together, especially when your hands are already full, when you are already doing your best just to survive, just to get through this world. Life was not easy before 2020. Was your life easy? Was your life great? Was 2020 just like, oh geez, this is the first? No, life has always been hard, and it has always been beautiful in equal measure, but not at the same time, not at the same time. There's another truth that I find from my own experience and from the experience of listening to story after story as a part of my podcast, Terrible Thanks for Asking. Every week I sit with a different guest and I ask, how are you? And we wait for the real answer behind the hardest thing that they have ever gone through. And there's a theme that comes up over and over and over, which is that you can't do it alone. Even if your grief and your loss is completely yours, we need each other. And you'll also see that in the stories that you've seen, the stories that you've read. Any Hobbit fans here? Okay, there we go. Okay, we got one. We got We got one Hobbit fan at least. Okay, we got one Hobbit fan. We got two Hobbit fans. I actually think Katie was just touching her hair. Okay. Frodo leaves the Shire, right? He goes into the unknown. He is a solo player, all right? He is on his own. He does not need anybody, and you know who he especially doesn't need? Also, major spoilers for The Hobbit ahead. I'm so sorry, but at this point, I think the movie's like 15 years old, and I think we can just jump in. He doesn't like dwarves. He looks down on dwarves. Dwarves are disgusting. They're rude. He wants nothing to do with them. Who helps him? Who gets him through? The dwarves. The dwarves. That book also gave us, I think, one of the most apt descriptions of life and of sorrow and of grief and of loss and of struggle, which is you can't go around it. You can't go over it. It just must be gone through. It must be gone through. I had a guest on my podcast once say that he felt like grief was an individual sport. And he felt this way because he had lost his best friend. His best friend of 20 years had died, and he Googled what to do when your best friend dies and you're a guy. And the articles that were returned to him were all about if your dog dies, not if your human best friend from college who has been there for all of your big life events dies, but what if your dog dies? And I mean, you know, he didn't need help with a dead dog. He needed help with a dead friend, and he didn't have anybody who understood what it felt like for him to lose Darren. And as much as I wanted to say, no, you're not. You're not in this alone. I can understand why it feels that way. Because his loss was his. Nobody else had lost their very best friend. When Aaron died, I was, as far as I know, his only wife. He was his mother's only son. He was his sister's only brother. Our grief was individual, even as we were mourning the same person. And I think that's why groups like this are so important. Communities like this are so important. Reminding ourselves that we do need each other, that the only way is through, and that we will sometimes need to look around and find a light that is shining on the same footpath, because it does feel so dark. It feels so lonely. And loneliness has always been, or suffering has always been so lonely, and loneliness is suffering. It really is. And so it's so important for us to try to look up, for us to try to look around and see who else is here, who else wants to be here for us. We talk a lot about empathy, and we mostly talk about it in an external way, right? Can you be empathetic and compassionate for another person? Can you be empathetic and compassionate for your coworkers, for your colleagues, for the people in your life that annoy the absolute crap out of you, right? We practice it externally over and over. But what about you? What about giving yourself that same empathy and that same compassion? And because I love examples, I'm going to give you a few. Saying, well, it's not that bad is not empathetic. Telling yourself, well, like some people have it worse, is absolutely not empathetic. Telling yourself, oh, I got to get over this. I got to get beyond this, is not empathetic. And neither is this. We have a rule. Katie listens to the podcast, don't you? Don't you? Okay. Don't you? Katie does. We have a sort of rule, right? For our podcast, we have a rule in our community. I have a rule in my home. It is so hard. We don't say the should word. We do not say that. Trust me when I say my 4-year-old has learned plenty of other words. Those preschool phone calls are very fun for me. I always try to blame his older siblings for that, because Lord knows he's not heard it from me. No. But should is not empathy, and should is not compassion at all. Should is an act of comparison, and often when we should ourselves, what we are doing is comparing ourselves to other people. We are comparing our internal landscape to their external projection. We are comparing our experience to theirs, even though in that very first exercise we did, we have no idea. We have no idea the experiences and the background and the internal experiences that they have brought to this point. All of that is invisible to us. So should compares us against other people, and often it compares us to who we thought we could or would or should be now. Are you exactly where you thought you would be? 2019, New Year's Eve 2019, when you envisioned the coming years, are you right where you thought you would be? Is your life exactly as you thought it would be? No, should is not compassionate or empathetic because it does not allow us the space to acknowledge where we are and what brought us here. All it does is tell us, not good enough, not good enough. When we talk about offering ourselves empathy, when we talk about finding unexpected allies, one of the biggest parts of the hero's journey, a lot of that comes from honesty. So often our struggle, our illness, our pain is invisible to other people. And every one of us, it is the most human need we have to be seen, to be heard, to be known. That is something that every single person in this room, every single person that you love and admire or dislike, we all share that same need. And here's the thing, nobody knows except us. Now, when your ship is sinking, it is absolutely inconvenient to also have to captain that ship. It's the worst. You already have enough on your plate, and now you also have to teach everybody else around you your operating instructions. Who has the time? The reason our podcast is called Terrible Thanks for Asking is because that was wish fulfillment. After Aaron died, everybody wanted to know, how are you? How are you? I mean, people asked me that at the funeral, and I looked them dead in the eye, and I said, I'm fine. I'm pretty good. I'd say we're good. Yeah, no, things are good. Things are good. Things are good. Because it did not feel like the time to say, I feel like I'm reaching the end of my rapidly fraying rope. It just didn't. It felt like it would be too hard. I was so afraid to look at the depths of my own suffering because I was afraid if I looked, I would fall in and I would never be able to get out. And if I showed it to other people, that would be all they could see. I think a lot of us feel that way, that we might just become to other people our diagnosis or our trauma or some sort of experience that is absolutely a part of us and always will be, but does not always need to be the headline. Now, when I was saying fine, I was sure that what I was doing was protecting the people around me, right? I didn't want to get my sad on you. I wanted to just let's keep it contained as much as possible. But what it did was every time I said fine, I placed that fine as a nice thick brick between myself and the people who wanted to help me. My friends, my family, specifically my siblings who are my people. They get me. And I made it impossible for them to get me, impossible for them to help. About 8 months after Aaron died, I had this awful, horrible fight with my little brother. I shouldn't say little, he's like 35, but still, my baby brother. And I had this horrible argument and I left and he left. And I'm pretty sure my mom cried, obviously, just everyone's yelling. Everyone cried. And then my sister, picked me up in her car and she said, we don't know what to do because you make it look so easy. And I thought, what? What's wrong with you? What is wrong with you? How could you not know the things that I haven't told you? How could you not know the things that I have hidden from you? I thought you knew me better than that. Okay. I do believe in boundaries. I do believe in that not everybody is a safe place for your story. Not everybody deserves it. But the people that do, and you can feel it, you can feel when you are in a safe place with somebody, they need to know. They need to know so that they can show up for you. And it is excruciating to be that vulnerable. It is excruciating often to need someone, but we all do, every single one of us. So, I have not been historically good at that. I mentioned, telling everybody that I was fine. These are photos from my Instagram from the 3 weeks after my husband died. The 3 weeks, okay? The 3 weeks after my husband died. Here I am out at dinner with my mother. Here I am taking a selfie with my baby. Here I am running. I would never do that now. What was wrong with me? Okay? out there just running, smiling. And these were true. These things happened. Okay. I did eat dinner and I did still raise my child, and I did, for reasons inexplicable to myself now, I went running like outside numerous times. Does not make any sense to this current version of me, but that version was like in it. That is a part of the truth. It was not the whole truth. It was not the whole truth. The whole truth was that I spent my nights awake, unable to sleep, watching Real Housewives of Orange County and drinking Skinny Girl margarita and thinking, well, my life's not that bad. Could be worse. I could be on the Real Housewives of Orange County. Okay. And if you don't love that franchise, we could talk about a lot of things. We could talk about 90 Day Fiance. We could talk about I watch a lot of reality television. And I spent a lot of my time doing that. I spent a lot of my time going through different fundraisers for people who had experienced different kinds of loss, people who needed money to pay for funerals or to pay for wheelchairs, people who were aching with a need that could not be met. And I just threw out money. It turns out like they'll take a credit card. Okay. That version of my life was the version that I didn't think was palatable to other people. That is the version of my life that I kept just for myself, because I did not know how to say, this hurts so badly. I didn't know. I spent a lot of time in those early evenings replying to emails too. And so I got to tell you like a brief side story, which is that before Aaron died, he and I wrote his obituary together. Highly unusual. Usually wait till a person dies and then you write it afterwards and you're like, I don't know, what was important? That's what we did with my dad, okay? My siblings and I sat on the couch and we were like, God, I don't know. He really liked to golf, right? Should we put golf first or like us first? And we're like, put golf first. Okay. He definitely liked golfing and he thought we were okay. So, it took four of us. And the irony is that my dad wrote infomercials for a living. My dad wrote the TV shows between the TV shows late at night where you're sold like a blender or like, an ab product to help like get you ripped. My dad could have written his obituary in like 5 minutes, no fuss, no muss, set it and forget it. And instead we had to do it. And I hated that experience. I thought how horrible that, my siblings and I are somehow responsible for summarizing my dad's life for the world. And when Aaron was put onto hospice care, we went home and we sat in bed and we got ready to watch Game of Thrones. And I paused it and I said, will you write your obituary with me? And also, will you make a funeral playlist? And he said, I already made a playlist. I would never trust you with the music, which I understand. I have horrible taste in music. It would have been like just like a Britney Spears playlist, maybe. And then like maybe some like George Harrison. It would have been all over the place. It would have been bad. He was like, I already made it from front to back. Don't mess with it. Don't put it on shuffle. It's in an order. I was like, got it. Thank you. So we sat down and we wrote his obituary together. And this is it. Looks like a regular obituary. This is his cause of death. He was bitten by a radioactive spider bite. This is a problem that plagues America. You would not believe it. Everybody turns into a crime fighter. I somehow screenshotted and forgot the most important line, which is that civilians will recognize him as Spider-Man and thank him for his years of service defending their fair city. We also included his first wife in the obituary. We'd gone like back and forth, like Taylor Swift, Gwen Stefani. We went with Gwen Stefani because she felt more age appropriate. Taylor Swift was rather young, 6 years ago, and it just didn't feel okay. Also, more than one person at that funeral, but definitely my friend's grandma was like, it was so classy of you to put his first wife in the obituary. So classy. I was like, thank you. Thank you, Phyllis. I am classy. Definitely. I think she just thought that like Gwen Stefani was like a girl from the suburbs of Minneapolis that Aaron married young. I just thought that was so cute. So Aaron and I write his obituary. It goes out. It has all the facts in it. And it also has, the truth of Aaron too, the truth, which is that he was the kind of person who made you feel like the party had started and you were there and the joke was funny, but you were in on it. You were always in on it. And as a result, it went viral. And this is 2014 viral, not 2021 viral. We didn't have TikTok. We didn't have Snapchat. We didn't have don't know what else we didn't have. The internet was a smaller place, okay? It just was. And maybe one thing would go viral a day. Aaron's obituary for the week between his death and even after his funeral was everywhere. It was on TV, it was on the radio, it was on the internet in languages that I didn't even speak. It was absolutely everywhere. And what happened was my inboxes started to fill up on Twitter, on Facebook, my email. People figured it out. It's really not that hard to guess my email. And I started getting messages from people from all around the world. And these messages were about comforting me and also recognizing me and saying, I went through something too. And here's how it felt for me. And these were complete strangers who were telling me often about things that happened 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, sometimes decades ago. And I started to have this realization as I'm reading and replying to all of these messages that the people reaching out to me were not reaching out because they didn't have friends and family. They were reaching out because their friends and family maybe had stopped asking, maybe had never asked, maybe never knew how to talk about it. These people knew that likely I was feeling alone and I was feeling lost. What they were doing was just shining a little light on this path and saying, like, I am here too. I'm here even if I'm in Finland or Ohio. I'm here and I know what this feels like. I went through something similar. You're not alone. And these are the people who led me to those books and led me to that podcast and led me here right where I am today, who reminded me, yeah, we can't go around, we have to go through. And how do we do that? We do it slowly. And I know nobody wants to hear that, but all progress happens slowly. And I'm sure if you look at your own life, even outside of the confines of 2020 and 2021, you'll see the same thing, that things don't happen quickly. Change does not happen quickly. I met a woman today on my tour who told me about her experience at Peckham and how she's been here for 10 years. That's not quick, right? And the progress she has made is monumental. It is exponential. Hi, Sean, if you get to watch this later. It is so incredible. She owns a home. She owns a car. She has a job that she loves. These are not things that she had 10 years ago, and they did not happen overnight. They didn't happen overnight, and they didn't happen linearly. And plenty of mental health professionals will tell you about the study of post-traumatic growth, which is that people come out of hard things. They come out of trauma. They come out of hardship with a renewed sense of purpose or passion, with like a new lease on life, and that it takes time. It happens eventually. And we are not a patient culture, are we? We're not a patient culture. It's not very particularly patient to say, you know, your only limits your mind, or good vibes only. We want things when we want them, and we want them quickly. And this is not a perfect metaphor, the hero's journey, because as you know, most things, everything, it isn't linear. So it isn't as if once you come out of this experience, you'll never go through it again. And that's actually kind of why I like this illustration. It keeps it open at the end. You do eventually go back, right? Elsa goes back. She goes back, right? Again, major spoilers here for that movie. Simba goes back. Frodo goes back, and he looks the same. Everybody thinks that he's the same. He is the only person who knows that he has changed. The only person. So eventually things do end, right? You return back to your normal world, which is what we all feel like we're on the precipice right now of returning to the normal world, but you are different. And even if those differences are not written on you physically, if they are not evident to the people around you, they are still real. And it is absolutely normal. We said that earlier, right? Like, the things that you've experienced in this past year are normal. However you feel about normal is normal. Back when I took those photos in those 3 weeks after Aaron died, I bought a self-help book. Let's just talk about this. I bought a self-help book because I was like, what is wrong with me? Like, God, I just cannot get my life together. My husband's been dead for 3 weeks. And man, I just, just don't have the same fire in my belly for work. I just am having a hard time focusing. I'm really sad. I wonder if this book can help me not be sad. Really, I was afraid to acknowledge that I was experiencing normal, that I was normal, that it was normal for me to be in pain. And my normal now is very different than it was 6 years ago, than it was 4 years ago. It absolutely was. But when we talk about getting back to normal, I also want to sit and think about that sentence a little bit more. I want to make sure that what we are doing when we move forward is that we are taking this experience with us, that we are not leaving people out and leaving them behind. Because this past year and these experiences, they mean that we are not all on a level playing field. And I know that you already know that, because that is the work that you live and breathe and the change that you are bringing to this world. So what does normal mean to you now as we move forward? What does it mean for the families of those 3 million people who have died? What does it mean for the kids who didn't get to graduate and the babies who still haven't met their grandparents? And for all of us who experience the loss of security, of our traditions, of our connections? I don't know. And I think we need to leave room for interpretation and for redefinition as we move forward. I love this poem, this part of a poem. This is the second stanza of a 3-stanza poem, but we don't move on from, we move forward with. And I think this part of this poem is the perfect encapsulation of this. Let everything happen to you, beauty and terror. Just keep going. No feeling is final. The point is not just, well, life is beautiful. So get those bad vibes out. The point is not just like, wow, terror, life is terrible, stop smiling. No, it's both. It is both. So here we go. Moving forward, letting everything happen, the beauty and the terror, knowing that our only job is to just keep going and know that the feeling is not final. Thank you so much for having me here today and for being so patient while we work on our tech issues, which were 100% mine. David is not culpable for these, okay? Absolutely wonderful. And Sarah is going to be moderating questions. So if you have any, pop them in the chat. I so wish we were here, that everybody was like here in, probably not this room, it'd be a little tight, but like a room together. Look forward to that day. We could just hug people. But yeah, if there's anything, Sarah will lob them my way. Do we have anything?
We do.
Okay. Oh, great.
Our guests virtually can hear the questions. We have a lot of comments and questions. Nora, comments thanking you for your inspirational work. Kelly, who says you helped her grieving daughter who tragically lost her husband at 3 years old. A comment that says your message is so amazing. And this person who's anonymous wishes we could all be more comfortable being honest with our grief. We do have a question. This is a bit of a long question.
All right, I will listen.
So listen well. When I did my family's genealogy, one of my takeaways is that until surprisingly recently, my forebearers had significant personal losses in their lives of a frequency far higher than I have experienced. Deaths, injuries, famines, children dying. Things were just tougher for them, and they were tough people because of it. What lessons can we learn from that, so from our ancestors and our perception of their experience?
That's so interesting. My things were tougher, and I don't know that people were tougher. I think that there was even less latitude for the expression of suffering, and there was a lot less. I've said before that everybody experiences grief, but not everybody has the privilege of grieving. And so part of that, I think, especially for historically marginalized communities, is you move forward because you have to. You literally, it is imperative to your survival that you get back to work, that you do not tend to those emotional wounds or those mental health issues. And so it is very, very easy for us to sort of deify our ancestors. I think within my own family, I remember complaining about, I had depression in college, and it was very immediate, and I did not have the language for it, and I was trying to explain it to my dad, and he was like, well, I didn't want to go to Vietnam, but I went. And that shuts things down pretty quickly, right? When we compare our experience to somebody else's, it assumes that, well, we're all starting from the same place, and the weight is distributed evenly. And I can understand my dad thinking that. He worked really hard and I had a relatively easy life. I'd yet to go through anything that was obviously difficult, but that was brain chemistry. That was just brain chemistry. And I think that about, my ancestors too. My great grandmothers had 14 children each, and 7 survived to, adulthood. And I think, wow, how could they possibly survive that? Well, they were living on a farm and they didn't have a choice. And who knows the sort of toll that took on them mentally and emotionally, and the ways that they passed that sort of lack of emotional literacy down to their children and their children's children. And I kind of see that in like the example of my dad telling me like, oh, you think your life is hard? Like, well, I went to Vietnam because that's how his father treated him and how his father was treated. And so I don't say that to minimize like how the amazing feat of human survival over time. Absolutely. Truly, people are a tenacious species. They truly are. And I wonder what kind of pain went unrealized and untreated.
Thank you, and I hope people can hear me. I did get some messages that people couldn't, so let me know if you can hear me better now. The next question is from Treya, and it says, how can we make space in the workplace for grief? Is it time off? Should there be workplace culture adaptations to make space for these big feelings we all transition through?
Yeah. I had amazing conversations again here, and I do feel like you guys are really lucky. Like Peckham feels like a place that really does get it. And I do think there's 2 things to understand, which is that things are not linear. So most companies, right, will give you 3 days off if you lose a spouse, a parent, or a child. A little iffy if it's an uncle, sometimes hard to, maybe you can take PTO. But right after all of like the immediate tasks of death are completed, grief can remain. It does remain, obviously. Like it takes time to process all of that stuff. And I think it is difficult. You don't want to force some sort of vulnerability onto people who do not have that trusting relationship with you yet. And I also think flexibility is really important. Every person wants to feel appreciated. Every person wants space to be a person. When my husband was diagnosed, I emailed my HR person. I said, I'm coming back to work. Here are instructions. Send an all agency email. Nobody talk to me about this unless I initiate it. Nobody. Work is going to be my break from this feeling, and I don't want anyone to bring it up. Now, I reserve the right to change my mind at any point, burst into tears in a meeting and leave. That's really difficult, right? Like that is really difficult for an entire workplace to sort of like shift around your emotional landscape. And like we do need some sort of agency as people to say, I'm not sure what I need yet. So I think checking in long-term to say, hey, do you have what you need? How is it going right now? And when things change, can you communicate that to me so we can make a plan moving forward? Because I fully also understand that things do need to get done, and they need to get done in a way that is acceptable. Everybody has, it's all connected, right? All of our work is connected. If one piece falls out, then everybody else sort of picks stuff up. And I kind of also think that's okay. I think that's okay. So as an employer, I tell people to take off the time that they need to take off and let me know. Like, let me know what is happening. And I know that's not feasible for every single person. Not every supervisor has that kind of individual power, but yeah, it's very individual, and it requires a lot of communication. Like anything difficult in life, it just requires a lot of communication.
Thank you. Next question. How did you break through the phase of I'm fine and allow others to help you?
That conversation with my sister destroyed me. I had just that feeling of, oh my God, here's my sister showing up literally physically outside of my house, crying, being like, what do we do? What do we do? You have some expectation that we are not meeting. And I was like, yes, I do. And you aren't. and she was like, you are doing a dance that none of us know the steps to. And I was like, well, I don't know the steps either. I am out here flailing. And I think that is so true for so many of us. Like we truly do think that the people who know us and love us, and especially the people who share our DNA and grew up in the same house with us, would all know, right? Would know how we want to be loved. And it is truly our responsibility to teach people over and over again how to do it. Aaron, we're approaching his 7th death anniversary. Last year on his 6th. It's always the same year, by the way. He's always died on November 25th. I wake up. I always take that day off. You know, I'm like, just going to have space just in case. I go on a hike. I get home. I check my phone. I'm like, my brothers haven't called. So I'm like waiting, right? I'm like doing that really mentally healthy thing where you're like, let me just see if anyone loves me. Let me just wait. I like wait, it's 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. And I open the group chat and I'm about to do the thing that like you want to do, right? Which is be like, all of you are terrible. None of you are good siblings. Also, you're a bad mom. I told you nobody loved me. Middle child. I don't know if anyone believes in birth order. Middle child to the max here. I'm like, oh. But instead I'm like, hey guys, it's Aaron's death anniversary. It's always a hard day for me. I didn't hear from you and it made me feel like I'm the only person who cares and I'm the only person who misses him. And that passage of time is really difficult for me. Next year, can you put in your calendar to text me or call me by 9 a.m. my time? Okay, very clear ask, right? Like, this is what I need from you and this is how you can love me. And my siblings replied and they were like, whoa, no, I knew. Yeah, no, I lit a candle today. Oh no, I went to church. They're like, I just didn't think they were loving me how they wanted to be loved. And that's what we're doing in most cases, right? We were taught treat people how you want to be treated. And no offense to the Bible, terrible advice. Like we're not all the same. Like we are not all the same. You have to treat people the way they want to be treated, which also means there just has to be so much communication. And we truly do have this expectation that the longer you know me, the more apt you are to read my mind. Any married couple will tell you that's false. It's just not possible. Not possible to this day. People can learn how you take your coffee. They will forget how you live, how you experience this world, because your coffee order might not change, but the way that you experience this world absolutely will.
This next question is from Diane, and in some ways it piggybacks off that idea. Maybe people want to hear different things, but her question is, what do you say to someone who has just lost someone? Yeah. And what do you say going forward?
So I have this Venn diagram, maybe I'll throw it in for the afternoon talk, where I say like, where people mostly want to know, like, what do I do? And the formula is very simple. What can you do? Like, what is in your physical capabilities, and what will you do competently, consistently, and humbly? Words are not meant to fix something. Words are meant to tell you you are not alone. And all you have to say is, this is terrible, and I am so sorry. When you are close to somebody, you can also say, I don't know quite how to be your friend through this, but I am here, and I am going to show up in the ways that I can. Let me know. And don't say, here's what not to say. Don't say, let me know what you need. How do I know what I need? How can I possibly go through like the mental gymnastics of like, matching my sort of idea of what I need to your capabilities and like trust level, I mean, I once asked an unnamed family member to watch my child. I was like, I'm going to have a full-on mental breakdown. I need to go for like a 2-mile run. Again, it was a different time. And will you come over and just sit with the baby so I can go do that? And she said, I have yoga. So I never wanted to ask anyone for anything again. ever. I just didn't. I never wanted to do it again. And it was so unfortunate. So I started just putting out like a mass text to people that I did trust. And I said, only reply if the answer is yes. Do not tell me what better thing you are doing with your time. Only reply if the answer is yes. All you have to say to somebody is that you are sorry. You have to acknowledge it is horrible. Moving forward, if this was a person or an experience that you knew, everybody that I know who has a dead person loves to hear their name. Don't you? Don't you? I want to hear their name. And I don't want to hear like, oh, like they're dead. Like I already know that. I want to hear, I got an email a few months ago from a person who had gone to high school with Aaron, and she sent me, she scanned in a photo of him that I'd never seen, that I would never see because it was in a shoebox in her parents' basement with all of her other stuff from high school. That was such a gift. It was such a gift to get the kind of memories that live inside of other people. And I think if you want to be, you know, a person who is like really, really aware of the emotional landscape of other people, you can ask people how they are right now, and also put milestones in your calendar. If this person is important to you, if the relationship is important to you, not because you have to say like, okay, this is the anniversary of like this horrible car accident, I should, but so you understand that people's bodies remember. There's a very dense book, you should listen to it if you have the time. Do it on 1.5 speed, called The Body Keeps the Score. There's another book called My Grandmother's Hands about physical and intergenerational trauma. Your body does remember. Your body remembers the things that you've gone through. Every fall around October, I'm tight, I'm miserable all over again, like because my body remembers. And even coworkers who I work with now who didn't know me at that time, I just say like, hey, October, November, I try not to schedule anything like really big. The whole last week of November, I might not reply to your emails, just letting everybody know. That is an absolute privilege of the position that I'm in now. But I just think it is so easy to sort of get into the habit of pretending to be normal and not realizing that it is very normal for things to continue to affect you in new and different ways.
Okay. That's a great segue to the next
There
question.
we go.
It's like you saw the questions as they were submitted.
I did it. We're just connecting. Yeah.
So this next question, I think, relates to the idea that we've all been holding a lot in our bodies over the past year plus. And the question is, as we go back to normal, in quotations, from COVID, what lessons do you have as we all move forward?
And that connects to physicality, are they saying?
No, I mean, I added the body keeps the score connection. Just what lessons do you recommend? Because we're all kind of trying to move forward from this collective trauma.
Yeah, we're all trying to move forward. And I think we should not confuse moving forward with forgetting. We should not confuse moving forward with erasure of the past year. There's been also some really, really important things, important movements that have happened this past year that will continue to be a part of our cultural landscape. Patience. Right away in the pandemic, we have this really American need for things to be something that they're not, right? So does anyone remember like right away people were like, how to turn your quarantine into a vacation at home? And you're like, what? Like, what? No, what? And not everybody can do that. Not everybody can be like, and then we poured like 7, tons of sand into our basement and put on a heat lamp and we pretended we were at the beach. Like just like wacky things, like let's pretend it's something else. And your brain will do, a pretty good job of protecting you from immediate trauma. But right away we had this need for it to be something else. And it can be very, very tempting to be like, okay, now that this is over, what are our top 10 lessons? Like, how can we turn this into something? I think it just takes time for us to realize what something means and the effects of something. And so at the very beginning, we were faking. Then I think we transitioned into a need for frenetic self-improvement, right? Did anybody see those things that was like, come out of quarantine like with abs? And I was like, what? Like come out of quarantine alive? How about like, let's just lower our expectations truly so that we don't have to constantly be like striving and achieving, but we can really, really experience happiness with the miracle of being alive and surviving. So for me, it is simplicity. It is grace for myself and for other people. And those are not things that I want to forget. I want to remember this time where truly we were all brought to like a standstill, and what it meant to sort of get off the treadmill for a moment, because a lot of times that treadmill leaves people behind. And I felt very emotional doing a tour of Peckham and realizing like the importance of this work. And it really is an honor to be here around so many people who are so dedicated to making sure that there's space. There's space and there's opportunity for other people to also move forward. And I think that is such a good example for the rest of the world. It's we have a very individualistic culture. And if we are so focused on what one person can achieve, we really do miss this opportunity for us to pull everybody up with us. So.
Wise words. Thank you. And unfortunately, we only have time for one more question.
I got it. I'll wrap it up. I won't do a 9-minute answer.
Well,
sorry.
no, we didn't get to all of the questions, but you did cover in your comments some of kind of the flavor of some of the questions. But this last one is a follow-up to something you said about not being able to, in grief, do the mental gymnastics to tell people what you need and match to their capabilities. It says, so how do we respectfully say, I don't know what you need, but please tell me, how do we help?
Okay, you do what you can do and what you will do. In my experience, the ratio was all over the place. And so when I say consistently, competently, and humbly, I woke up after Aaron's funeral. There were feet of snow. This is Minnesota in the winter. I lived in Minnesota at the time. And I heard someone on my roof. I was like, oh my God. I knew who it was. It was my neighbor, Mark, who, when there were giant snowfalls, would not just scrape his roof. He would sweep off the extra snow to avoid ice dams. He was on my roof doing that. Okay. I would never do that. I would never do that. I do not belong on a roof. I don't belong on a ladder. I don't belong on any surface. I'm surprised I can stand right here. Okay. I don't do dangerous things. But that's what he did. And he did it every time it snowed. I would hear him on my roof. I would hear him like clearing out my driveway. And he did that and he never mentioned it. He never, I knew that I thanked him, but he wasn't like out there waiting like, hey, you see me? I'm doing this thing. I had a friend who showed up. She had sent me a text message and said, I'm at Costco and I'm going to drop off things on your back porch and then I'm going to drive away so you don't have to see me. I was like, oh, thank God. Like, oh my God. So like you do a thing. And whether or not the person thanks you, you don't care, right? You're going to do the thing that you can do. And if what you can do is send a text and say, I'm thinking about you, no need to reply. Oh, I'm at Costco. I'm gonna drop off milk, eggs, and butter because I know, and toilet paper because I know those are things that, unless you're a vegan, everybody needs. You just do something like that, and it doesn't have to be huge and it doesn't have to be heroic. And those two examples are the ones that always come to mind because they were so consistent and they were so comforting. And eventually Hannah dropped off those things for weeks and weeks before I opened the door. Weeks and weeks. I just watched her headlights leave the driveway. And then one day I was like, oh, you can come in. Like, you can come in. And it's really hard. Also, people who are in pain are not always like at their best, right? That's okay. That's okay. Like, people need to know that they are loved even when they are imperfect, even when they feel unlovable. And grief and mental illness and any sort of struggle makes you feel like you are unlovable. And we all need the reminder that not only are you lovable, you are loved, period. Sorry, it took 2 minutes. Apologies.
I think that's a perfect place to end. Nora, thank you. And Joe, I think you wanted to give a formal closure.
Thank you so much, Nora. There was a lot of words of wisdom shared today. Some things I learned. I'd never heard of post-traumatic growth. I am now going to Google it and try to practice it. And I hope as a nation, we learn And we learn from this epidemic, and that we learn from our own grief, and that we all experience post-traumatic growth, because clearly, Nora, you did, and you made something of it, and you moved forward with your knowledge and helping all of us move forward with these difficult conversations. It's not easy to talk about grief, but thank you, Nora.